Greetings, Card Fighter Project fans! During this video, we're going to take a look at how to play the game. For those of you who have already played Card Fighters Clash 2 on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, you already know how to play the tabletop version. There are a few changes to the tabletop game, so it would still be good to check out the rules. If you have only played the game on the DS, then you will want to continue watching this video or read through the instructions as it is drastically different. For those of you who don't already know, the point of the game is to build a deck that will allow you to beat your opponent. You can beat your opponent by either reducing the player's hit points to 0 or by forcing them to draw the last card from their deck. To begin, we are going to take a look at the cards themselves. There are 3 card types: characters, action, and reaction cards. The character cards are the most important as the whole game revolves around the characters in the game. Character cards will either be from the SNK world or the Capcom world. Be sure to look over all the characters throughout the game, as many SNK characters can back up characters from the Capcom world and vice versa. Starting at the top, you will see the character's name. Pay attention to the whole name, as there may be variations of characters. There are even characters that share the same name between the SNK and Capcom worlds. Just below the name, you'll see a logo of the game that specific character originated from. If it's a variation of the character, it will be where that variation came from. Next is the rarity. This part is mostly just to keep in line with the video game. Originally, there were plans to use rarity for deck building, but since that didn't work out, we did away with that part. Under the rarity will be the card number. This is used to help make building decks a much faster, smoother operation. All cards are numbered different to indicate what kind of card it is. If you have an SNK card, it will begin with the letter S. Capcom cards start with the letter C, action cards with the letter A, and reaction cards all start with the letter R. Next is the character ability. The ability name will be highlighted here, and the description of what the ability does will be directly below. Not all characters have a special ability, but if they do, you will notice next to the ability name will be an icon, either a square, triangle, or a circle. These icons are important for you to know. A square is an ability that you have to activate during the attack phase, and it will take place of the attack for that character. A triangle is activated automatically when you put the character into play. The circle is a constant effect. When the character is put into the ring, it begins to take effect, and it will not quit until that character is either KO'd or forced out of the ring. Next is the BP, also known as battle points. This is both the health of your character and their attack power. As the character becomes damaged, their attack will also be reduced. So if you have 600 battle points when entering the ring, that character will also inflict 600 battle points of damage to an opponent. Over the course of time, if that character is reduced to, say, 100 battle points, the attack will also only be 100 battle points. Next is the character's SP, or soul points. This is the amount of soul points you gain when the character enters into the ring. Lastly are the characters that can back up this card. The characters listed here are the only ones that can offer backup to this card. You cannot back up multiple characters with the same card name unless their name is specifically mentioned multiple times, as with the case here with the Queen Bee. Next, the action and reaction cards are set up exactly the same, except action cards are used during an attack phase, and reaction cards are used in defense. At the top of the card, you will see the card name. To the right, you will find the rarity, the card number once again. At the bottom will be the description of the card, and below that will be the soul point cost to use that card. Before getting into the rest of the rules in the game, I also want you to remember the rules that are listed on these cards themselves always trump any of the written rules. So if there is ever any question of the rule, always follow the direction on the card. In this video, I will not be showing you how to build a deck from scratch, but there are a few rules that I would like to mention. First, your deck must consist of 50 cards. You can have a combination of SNK, Capcom, action, and reaction cards, but make sure that you do not have any more than 3 of any specific card. Also be sure that you have a good mix of all types of cards in your deck. You don't want to be too heavy on the amount of characters in your deck and leave out the action and reaction cards. In the same way, you don't want to have too many action or reaction cards and not have enough characters. Before I dive into the rest of the rules, we need to take a look at our playfield. As you can see, everything is labeled right in front of you. Your deck of 50 cards is placed in the face down position, right here. Your discards will be placed in a stack directly below it in the face up position. Next, we have the 3 available slots for characters in the ring. You cannot have more than 3 characters in the ring at any given time. The only exception to this rule is if you have a character that is backing up the primary character. Here you have SP reserves. As you play the characters or use certain actions and reaction cards, your SP reserves will increase and decrease by putting counters into this area. Now that you have your deck planned out and you have a friend to play the game, you're ready to get started. To begin, you'll need to know how many hit points each of you will have. A regular game, each player would begin with 2,000 hit points. You can play a shorter game at just 1,000 hit points, or if you want to follow tournament rules, you're going to have 3,000 hit points per each player. To keep track of your hit points and each card's battle points, I suggest using 30-sided dice. Simply place the number of available HP or BP in the upper position. If your character has 300 battle points, put the die with the number 3 positioned upward. For a character with 1,000 battle points, put it in the 10 position and again facing upright, and so on. The other way you can keep track is if you're using a game mat like I have here. You can use the number at the bottom of the mat and just put an icon over the number of your current HP. You can even use pen and paper to keep track of the numbers in the game, but I like using the dice and the jewels, of course, to keep track of the SP. It seems to be the most simple and useful way. Okay, you have your play area all set up now. We just have to decide who is going to go first. You can choose by the usual means, either just choose who's going to go first, or use a coin, or you could even play a game of rock, paper, scissors. There are advantages and disadvantages of being the first player who goes first. The first player to go will be the first player to get a chance to get a character into the ring. The disadvantage is that they will also have one less card to play with, and I'll explain this rule in just a bit. Right now, make sure both players have shuffled their decks, then each player has the opportunity to cut their opponent's deck to make sure they have not stacked it in any way. Once you are both satisfied, put your decks in their place on the playfield and draw 5 cards. Look at your cards. If you have not drawn any character cards, you can declare a redraw. Show your hand to your opponent, reshuffle your deck, and draw 5 new cards. You have to have at least 1 character card to continue. The person who won the challenge to go first will begin their turn. Card Fighters Project is played on the basis of 4 basic phases. Phase 1, the Activate phase. All characters in your side of the ring are released from Freeze phase. We'll get into the Freeze phase in just a moment, so keep that in mind. Phase number 2 is the Draw phase. Draw 1 card from your deck. If you are just starting a new game, the player who begins the game will not get to draw a card this first round. And this is that disadvantage that I spoke of earlier. This is only for this one time that they are unable to draw a card, unless a new rule is implemented due to a character ability or through an action or reaction card. Phase 3, Main phase. This is where most of the action of the game takes place. In this phase, you can do any or all of the following. You also have the choice to do nothing. If you would wish to pass, you are allowed to do so. But if you want to take an action, here are your options. Place a character into the ring. You can only do this once per turn. When a character first enters the ring, they are put into standby mode where they are unable to take any action until their next turn. You can only place one character into the ring at this point. When you place the character into the ring, be sure to collect on the SP that is indicated on the character's card. Also, take note of the character ability and make sure that you are playing it accordingly. Backup. This is an action that you can take to increase a character's battle points that has already been in the ring. When looking at a character card, you'll see several names under the backup heading. These characters will help your ringed character. For example, if you have Sakura in the ring, and she has been there past her standby time, Sakura's battle points is 500, so you decide to use Shingo to back her up as a legal play. Shingo has 400 battle points, but he is just being used as a backup for Sakura, so that doesn't matter. It'll only increase her battle points by 300. Sakura can also be backed up by Hinata. So if Hinata is in your hand and you choose to use her, it'll add yet another 300 battle points to Sakura, but of course it has to be done in a separate turn. Just remember, you cannot back up a character with more backup cards than what are listed on each individual character card. So in the case of Oro, you cannot back him up with 2 Ryu characters. You also cannot back Oro up with Ryu A, as that is a different character card from the one that is listed on this card here. There are some variations of different characters, so it's important to make sure that the name matches up 100%. Use action cards. Any number of action cards may be used so long as you have the SP to initiate them. Simply follow the rule on the card. Just remember, if you're going to use action cards, you are to do so before you attack. As soon as you attack, that is indicating it is the end of your turn. Speaking of attack, here are your options. There are several ways your active characters can attack. Here are some of the explanations for each. No matter what attack you choose to do, after doing so, remember your character must be turned sideways and be put into a frozen state, making them unable to take any action, including defending, until they are unfrozen in your next turn and you go back to phase 1. First, we're going to take a look at the single attack. Each character can attack on their own. To attack, simply push the card forward that will be attacking and indicate that they are attacking alone. Their current battle points are also their current attack power. If you attack your opponent and your opponent defends you, take the attacker's battle points minus the defender's battle points. So if the attacker's battle points is higher, they will of course defeat the defender and the attacker's battle points will be reduced. Now you, as the attacker, do not get to choose who you attack. The defender is the one who actually chooses who is defending the attack. For instance, if you have Ryu, and he's got 1,000 battle points still, and as he initiates his attack, the defender then chooses Guile to defend, and let's say he only has 300 battle points. Ryu will win this fight, but his battle points will be reduced to 700 battle points. Mark Ryu's new battle points and move Ryu into a freeze phase by turning him sideways. If Ryu attacks and your opponent decides not to defend Ryu's full attack with the 1,000 battle points, that damage is actually going to hit the opponent's hit points instead of a character, as they chose not to defend. A single attack will not normally reduce the hit points of a player unless no defense is taken. And it is possible to have 3 separate attackers. So if you decide you want to have all 3 of your characters attack by themselves, that is allowable. Now we're going to take a look at united attacks, also known as unions. A united attack is an attack of combined powers of either 2 or 3 active characters in your ring. If you choose to do a single union, which is attacking with 2 characters combined, it will cost you 5 SP. If you do a double union, attacking with all 3 characters combined, it will cost you 10 SP. The advantage of doing a united attack is that the defender who attempts to block the attack will be cut directly through that defender if they are unable to stop 100% of that power. Here is how a union works. Let's say you have 3 characters ready to attack. For this example, I'm going to use Ryu, Ken, and Chun-Li. And to make this easier to explain, they are all currently sitting at 500 battle points each. Let's begin by doing a single union with Ryu and Ken. First, you need to spend the 5 SP to initiate this attack. Next, you need to tell your opponent who is going to be the first attacker and who is going to be taking on the brunt of the defense. And then, of course, who is going to be the second attacker. You then combine their battle points, which in this example would be a combined total of 1,000 battle points. For now, you decide to leave Chun-Li alone and you're not initiating her attack. Your opponent decides to use Geese to defend, and let's say he's sitting at 800 battle points right now. Here, of course, you've got Ken, who you want to be your first attacker in this union. His attack slams into Geese, reducing his battle points by 500. This will cause Ken to be KO'd and Geese to be reduced to 300 battle points. But of course, since this was a union, Ryu follows up immediately on that same defender. His attack of 500 hits Geese, who at this point still only has 300. Because Geese only has 300, this is going to knock him out. But it will reduce Ryu by 300 battle points, putting him down to 200 battle points. Geese is then taken, put into the discard pile, but Ryu's remaining 200 battle points will be then forced upon your opponent's hit points, reducing your opponent by 200 hit points. And now Ryu, of course, has to be put into a freeze phase. A double union works in the same way, only with all 3 characters in your ring and costing you twice as much at 10 soul points. To initiate the attack, just remember, you have to tell the defender who is attacking first, who is attacking second, and who is attacking third. Whoever leads that attack is the first one to start reducing life, and so on. Whatever is left over at the end, the defender, if he is unable to block that power coming after him, always is dealt against the hit points of your opponent. If you choose to use a square ability, you need to make sure that you're doing this before you do any other attacks. Again, once you have attacked, that is telling your opponent that your turn is over. So if you decide instead of doing a single attack or instead of doing a united attack, you have a character that has a square ability and you decide to use that instead. Follow the directions on the card to find out what kind of effect this is going to have on the battle. Once you have done so, put your attacking character into freeze phase. You can do combinations of attacks with the available characters in your ring. You may choose to have just one character attack and the rest just waiting so that they are ready to defend. Or you can have all 3 of your characters attack by themselves. You might even want to have one use a square ability and the other 2 to do a united attack. You can do mixing and matching of any sort of attack as long as it is legal. You might want to remember, though, when you attack, you have to put that character into a freeze state. When you do that, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to attack when it's your opponent's turn to come back at you. And the final phase, phase 4, is the counterattack phase. This is a phase for your opponent now to counterattack you, also known as defending. This phase has already been explained during the description of the attack phases, so I'm not going to go through that again. But remember here, this is your option now to be able to use your reaction cards. As long as you have SP available, you can use as many of those reaction cards that you choose to use. Once all of the attacks and all of the counterattacks have taken place, all characters have been put into their freeze phase as they should be, now it is the next player's turn to begin. Start all over in phase 1 and go back down through the list. Each player has their chance to go through and unfreeze, then draw, then attack, and then defend. Once one of the players has had their HP reduced to 0 or can no longer draw cards from their deck, they have lost. As soon as you draw that 50th card, if you cannot finish that phase out with anything else, the game is over. Well, that's about it for this episode of Card Fighter Project. If you have any questions, please leave some information down in the comments below. Come visit our website at cardfighterproject.com. You can see the link down also in the description. If you have any questions, you can list it through that website as well. Feel free to give me any comments, any feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys and see what kind of things you guys are doing out there while playing Card Fighter Project. Until next time, guys, take care.